Welcome back to the Evolution of the Soul series. My name is Cheryl Arts from Willow Roots, and thank you for joining me once again. And in today's video and audio, we're going to talk about how we kind of judge people for our first impressions, or, that old adage, don't judge a book by its cover. And I just want to talk about that today because it's come up a lot this week, and so it feels like it needs to be addressed in some way. And it kind of came up this morning. I was talking with a friend, and she was talking about this person and how she thought that this person did not like her at all. The vibe she got from her was not, warm and welcoming. But it turns out this person really did like her. And so we tend to have these judgments and these thoughts, and we need to trust what our instincts are, and that's great, but it's great that it can be proven wrong and that we don't hold people in that space. And I think I've talked about that before, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. I had a participant at a retreat one time, and they were kind of sitting at the front, and stone face, complete stone face. And, I just thought, wow, like, I'm not really reaching this person. And then it can get in your head a little bit because, part of me was like wanting to please. I want everyone to like me, and I want everyone to like what I do. And that just kind of goes to the core of what this discussion is about is insecurity, a little bit of insecurity there. So this person, but at the end of the retreat, she came up, she gave me her business card and said, I would love to work with you someday. And so it wasn't, what I was picking up at the time. And, I go back to think about one of my first job interviews when I went into the corporate world. I had an interview at what was General Motors Defense at the time, became General Dynamics. And the person who ended up becoming my boss was my interviewer, and complete poker face, no reaction. So we would ask a question and I would give a response. And my impression from that interview was like, huh, I chalked it up to that was a great experience. And, you learned a lot from that, but, something better will come along. And I ended up getting that job. So we tend to have these judgments about what we see on the outside, but we have no idea what's going on the inside, and how that resonates with somebody, or how people are picking up that energy. And that goes for what we see and what people see of us. And so I just want to talk about, I love Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, and one of the agreements is don't take it personally. And if you live by that rule alone, which is kind of what I'm talking about here, don't take things personally, don't take what people's reactions are you personally, that your life will be much calmer, like mentally calmer, because we kind of get worked up about these things in our head when, we feel that someone doesn't like us, or that their reaction was, over the top, or whatever that might be. But one of those agreements, I mean, all of the agreements are really wonderful, but I always think about this one, don't take it personally. And the reason I say that is that, there's so much going on right now. I don't know many people who aren't going through something. And so we have no idea what's going on in people's lives. We really don't. And for me, in the position I'm in and the work that I do, I get a glimpse of that when I help people on their journey of healing. And, I think a lot of times I'm really shocked about what people have gone through or what they're currently going through. That, I didn't realize that, they were going through so much. And so, I often had this with my concussion. So, at times I wished I'd had like a band-aid on my like a bandage on my head so that people knew I was dealing with a brain injury, because they would say, which was really great too, they would say, "Oh my goodness, you look amazing." And inside, I was just doing everything to keep it together. I was in so much pain. It was such a difficult conversation to have. And, and I it didn't feel that it was good for me to say, "Oh, well, Yeah, I do look great, but however, I'm, dot, 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 right? And kind of drag down the conversation. So I would kind of let that go. And a lot of times, with people with physical ailments or they're going through certain diseases and healing from that, or mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, manic depression, all of these things. And, we have no window into that and what that's like and what they're functioning with. And so as we're, going about our business and someone kind of reacts in a certain way, we're at the grocery store and the person at the checkout is acting a certain way, we can't take it personally. I often try to send them blessings that they'll find their healing or they find what they need to find happiness or whatever, that might be. But, you know, I think about the times that, I forgot my glasses somewhere. And, I have to like squint. So people might think that's a scowl from across the room, and it's not. It's just I was actually trying to see you and I'm trying to see a little better. Um, one of the things I like to talk about too, and this kind of came up just most recently, but with social media, it's even more poignant now to have this discussion. And I was talking with a friend, this is a few weeks ago, and we were talking about somebody we knew, and I said, "Oh, how are they doing?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, no, they seem to be doing well." And I was like, "Well, are they Facebook happy or are they happy happy?" And for those of you who are on social media, you know exactly what I mean. People can present themselves that they are doing really well, that they're so happy, they're traveling, they're doing all these incredible things, and the pictures of their family, and they're all smiling. But what happens when the camera's not rolling? And so this does a couple different things. So we can tend to judge that and say, wow, they're doing amazing. They're doing so well, but maybe that's just their best day. So we have no idea. We really don't. But sometimes we can get jealous of what we see on those platforms on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And we think, wow, they've got it all together and they've got all of these amazing things. And it's really not the case, right? And if you're one of those people that is presenting, and I'm not saying, come out with doom and gloom because that's not always helpful either, but not being authentic and not being who we truly are and showing our authentic self is not the greatest either. And so we can't really judge from what we see. It's probably more feeling, but I think, for me, like I said, with my healing clients, seeing them and getting to really talk to them and getting down a few layers to really see what's happening in their life and to know how they're actually doing. And, I think, it's not always to see those easy to see those layers. And that's probably why we put this front up but it's good to know that and really people just want to be listened to and know where we're at. And so, again, we just really have no idea what's happening. We can't take things personally. We can't judge these things. And I want to say too, I've had people comment about people who are healing practitioners. So I had this happened a few years back where I had someone who didn't want to disconnect from me. And so on my end, I'm always disconnecting after the work is complete because we're not meant to stay connected for that period of time. And, they wanted to stay connected. I think they wanted to stay connected in the really beautiful, loving energy that we created during the healing. And so she mentioned this to me a bit later, and I said, well, just be careful what you're connecting to because not only have I got my own stuff going on, but I continue to connect with other people going through a lot of things. So if you want to stay connected with me, that you're potentially tapping into many other people's ailments, diseases, discomforts, their struggles, and obviously their triumphs too. But also as a healer or someone who does healing for a living, we tend to go through a lot too, and that makes us really good at what we do. We turn those adverse events into alchemical gold, really. We turn them into things we can help people with, things we can help teach others. It can help us be more empathetic and really truly understanding to those who come to us with similar things. And so I don't know many healers that aren't going through some things, and so just to know that even from the outside, those of us who are holding space for many of you, at times we're going through our own stuff, and that's not and we do that with much grace and ease because that's the work we're called to do. And so, but again, like not just judging what you see on the outside. And I think, this came to light a few weeks ago. I was talking with a potential coaching client, and, we started talking about how I recovered from my concussion. So, and I think in their mind, they thought it was a quick fix. And this person hasn't known me that long. So for those who have known me and saw me through the transition of, who I was before, where I went to, and not many people got to see the depth of where I went to in terms of kind of that darkness that I talked about in my first video, the dark night of the soul. But those people who were closest to me got to see that glimpse of like, okay, how hard I worked to come out of that and to heal from that. And it wasn't easy. And so this person had this perception that I had to do a couple things for a few days, and it wasn't like that, at least not for me. It can be. That's just the path that manifested for me. But I worked really, really hard to get to where I was. And so there was this perception of me. And I think, for that person in particular, it was very enlightening because they were going through some dark struggles, and, they saw that they needed to put in the work to receive the benefits and the healing that they were looking for. So I just wanted to, kind of share that too, that, it's, this whole judging by the cover piece is not an easy thing, and it's not always accurate. And I think, we can always look at people, we can look at successful people and see where they're at and see the success where they're at. But I love to hear the stories, and I don't love that they went through this, but I love to hear the stories of how they got to where they got to. And, and many people are reading Mel Robbins' book. That was kind of enlightening to see. She had to reach bottom to go to where she's at. And I just watched a documentary on Michael J. Fox, so kind of a Canadian TV icon here in Canada, and how, he was on his last couple nickels before he landed Family Ties. And so there's a lot that happens for us to get to, but we can have this judgment of people where they're at and say, oh my gosh, I want that. But do you truly know what it takes to get there? Right. And so just, some thoughts around that. The other thing I just wanted to touch upon was kind of the world we're in, and like text messages and emails and different things. And, you know, I find it hard when I can't feel or sense the energy. And it's harder to do that from a text message, from an email. And I can like take things very personally. I can read it, I can perceive it in my own way. So I can put my own little twist on it if I want to, and it can go one way or the other. And so, we have to be very careful. So when I write text messages and email, I'll write it and then I'll go, okay, let's reread this again and kind of, fill this in a little bit and maybe soften it a bit, because sometimes I'm very direct and I need to just go, okay, let's just put some energy and some light in this. And so, I had this happen a lot at work when I worked in the corporate world, and there's, a lot of communication happened through text and email. And a lot of times I would pick up the phone and I was like, okay, talk to me. And when the conversation happened, there was more connection, more understanding, and more development that could go forward instead of an email. So I could have perceived an email the wrong or the right way. Or maybe there was like some hot energy in there, but helping to dissipate it or helping to go, okay, let's talk about this. Let's move this through, right? But a lot of judgment happens through text messages. A lot of misunderstandings can happen through that. And I think, we're missing that. So not, we're in this day and age where we're more connected than we've ever been, but yet there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect from that energy and the feelings around things. And, it's really important to kind of understand. So I guess what I'm saying through all of this is like there's another layer, not just on the face value, there's another layer kind of underneath. And that's worth knowing before we make our final, I don't even like to use the word judgment, but our final understanding of the situation or the circumstances. The other piece I want to talk to you, about is along the lines of text messages and emails and that type of thing is Zoom meetings. So, I'm recording this on Zoom. And actually, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm in a different location. My healing space is being renovated today. So, a couple of videos will be in this location. But when I do teaching online and somebody opts to not show their face, which I totally respect, I honor that. But it's really hard. It's very difficult to teach in that sense because I'm not getting any energetic feedback. So I don't know if you are tracking with what I'm saying or that you've fallen asleep or that, you're really enjoying it or you're like you've got questions. There's a lot of body language tells me a lot. And so again, I'm perceiving it, but I'm going to ask the question like, hey, it looks like you've got a question about something so that I can get an understanding of what's coming through. When people don't present themselves on the video, it makes it really hard. And so that even like there is no judgment, there is no perception at all, which, is really hard too. And it's hard to give you what you need when I can't see or sense that. And so, it's interesting, there's a lot that gets communicated. There's so much that gets communicated in the way that, when we talk to each other and really get to talk to each other. And so I think about all of this and I think about the world we live in and I think about adults. So I'm, nearly 49 years old and how I perceive some things and how I possibly take things personally and how, this post affects me and different things. And then I try to kind of translate that to my children who are young adults and teenagers and how that really impacts them because I think at the heart of it that there's insecurity. We all just want to be liked. We all just want to be loved. And when people judge us maybe harshly, or we're judging someone else harshly, that really doesn't help the world that we live in. And we need to have more compassion for the circumstances, the possible circumstances for what people are in. So I kind of touched upon many different aspects here. I was just trusting spirit to channel through what messages here, but the basic premise at the end of this is really don't judge a book by its cover. You can't judge what you see and to not take things personally. Do not take things personally. Do not take what people say personally. You have no idea. And one of the other things I just want to mention is just popping in right now. One of the people I really love in this world as kind of a mentor in some ways is Brene Brown. And she's got a lot of amazing books. And for those of us who are putting ourselves out there, we are, there's risk and reward in that. And, we open ourselves up for people to judge us. And, she said, why would I take criticism from somebody who's not even in the arena? A lot of people will pass judgment or thoughts around what other people are doing and yet they're not doing anything close to the same thing. They're not putting themselves out there. They're not taking risks. They're not, you know, stepping out of their comfort zone. And so that's just one last thing I want to share with you. So please don't take things personally. That's one. And if get a chance, grab Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, really great. Brene Brown's books are incredible along these lines. And yeah, really just don't. Judgment is one of the harshest things that we have. We don't want to be judged, and but yet we do that all the time. I think we're programmed to judge. We're programmed to see, oh, that person is smaller than they were before, or that color looks, has a certain energy, or, they look happy or they don't look happy. We're always looking. And this judgment, I think, is embedded into our culture, into our movies, our TV shows, and music, and those type of things, and maybe even our education system. And is it really serving us to be so judgmental? And so, instead of judgmenting, like having judgment, maybe some understanding and some compassion. Just replacing those two. And yeah, so thank you for joining me. And I look forward to more videos. Take care.